Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Asyhadu an la ilaha illallah wa asyhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Allahumma sholli ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain, amma ba'du. Yang saya hormati Direktur Program Pascasarjana IAIN Salatiga, Profesor Dr. Pil Aswawidianto MA. Yang saya hormati Wakil Direktur Program Pascasarjana IAIN Salatiga, Ibu Nurmaliyah PhD. Yang saya hormati Bapak narasumber Profesor Dr. Ednan Aslan MA. Yang saya hormati para kaprodi, sekprodi di lingkungan program Pascasarjana IAIN Salatiga. Yang saya hormati Bapak Ibu dosen dan para tamu undangan yang telah bersedia rawuh di kesempatan pada sore hari ini, beserta para hadirin semua, para mahasiswa dan seluruh sivitas akademika di IAIN Salatiga. Pertama-tama, marilah kita senantiasa memanjatkan puji syukur kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, karena atas limpahan berkah dan hidayahnya kita bisa berkumpul dalam keadaan sehat walafiat tanpa satu halangan apapun pada acara Interdisciplinary Colloquium yang diselenggarakan oleh program Pascasarjana IAIN Salatiga dengan tema Islamic Theology and Everyday Life of Muslim, dengan narasumber yang sangat spektakuler, sangat kita banggakan dan akan kita timba ilmunya dari Austria, Vienna University, yaitu Profesor Dr. Ednan Aslan MA. Salawat serta salam tak lupa juga kita aturkan kepada junjungan kita Nabi Agung, Nabi Besar Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, sebaik-baiknya tauladan kita semua yang selalu kita nantikan syafaatnya di hari yaumul akhir. Hadirin semuanya dan Bapak Ibu yang saya hormati, pada kesempatan kali ini perkenankan saya sebagai pembawa acara pada acara Interdisciplinary Colloquium hari ini untuk membacakan susunan acara yang akan kita lalui bersama pada sore hari ini. Acara yang pertama yaitu pembukaan, yang kedua menyanyikan lagu Indonesia Raya dan himne IAIN Salatiga, yang ketiga pembacaan ayat suci Al-Quran, yang keempat sambutan dari Direktur Program Pascasarjana, yang selanjutnya adalah doa, dan kemudian dilanjutkan dengan acara inti yaitu Interdisciplinary Colloquium, dan yang terakhir adalah penutup. Untuk mempersingkat waktu, marilah kita menuju pada acara yang pertama yaitu pembukaan. Mari kita buka secara bersama-sama acara Interdisciplinary Colloquium pada kesempatan di sore hari ini dengan membaca basmalah bersama-sama. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Semoga Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala memberikan kelancaran di dalam kegiatan pada sore hari ini. Acara yang kedua yaitu menyanyikan lagu Indonesia Raya dan himne IAIN Salatiga. Kepada Mbak Isna Husnia SAI, monggo dipersilahkan, dan para hadirin dimohon untuk berdiri. kembali. Menuju acara yang selanjutnya, yaitu pembacaan ayat suci Al-Quran. Kepada yang terhormat Kiai Haji Dr. Muhammad Nursikin, dipersilahkan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A'udzu billahi minasy syaithanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. ومن الناس من يقول آمنا بالله وباليوم الآخر وما هم بمؤمنين يخادعون الله والذين آمنوا وما يخدعون إلا أنفسهم وما يشعرون في قلوبهم مرض فزادهم الله مرضا ولهم عذاب أليم بما كانوا يكذبون ولهم عذاب أليم بما كانوا يكذبون صدق الله العظيم. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih kepada Kiai Haji Muhammad Nursikin atas lantunan ayat suci Al-Quran yang sangat merdu. Menuju acara yang selanjutnya yaitu sambutan Direktur Program Pascasarjana kepada yang terhormat Profesor Dr. Pil Aswa Widianto, dipersilakan.
Oke. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh wa na'udzu billahi min syururi anfusina wa sayyiati a'malina, may yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa may yudlil fala hadiya lahu. Honorable audience, also our guest speaker, Professor Ednan Aslan. Welcome to Salatiga. This is Bu normally explain what the meaning of Salatiga, and herzlich willkommen in Salatiga Indonesian. Also, honorable our lecturer, our faculty member of graduate studies, and also vice director of graduate studies of UIN Wali Songo, Pak Mohyar, vice director of graduate studies of IAIN Salatiga, Bu Nurmaliha, and many other audience, students, dear student. I think it is an honor for us to have Professor Ednan Aslan here in our colloquium. We held monthly colloquium, Prof. Ednan. Bulanan ya, monthly, every month. And we discuss many academic discipline related to our program, our study program. In our graduate studies, di Pascasarjana kita, our graduate studies, we have 6 study program, 6 department, and we have 1 doctoral program of Islamic religious education. And I think it is highly relevant for the coming of Professor Ednan, since he is the chair of religious education, Islamic religious education. In German we say Islamische Religion Pädagogik, and it is relevant for our study program of our department. We have doctorate program, also master degree program. And our topic today is very important actually, because when we see Islamic theology, sometimes we are not realize that Islamic theology has 2 different meaning actually. This is just short introduction, muqaddimah musahalah for our lecture today, Professor Ednan. Islamic theology in al-ma'nalul am, in generic sense, meaning traditionally established Islamic sciences, classical Islamic sciences. So Islamic theology in this generic sense cover fikih, usul fikih, ulumul hadis, ulumul Quran, ilmu kalam, falsafah, ilmu tarikh, wa ghairuha, and any other. This is the Islamic theology in the generic sense, al-manul am. But Islamic theology in its specific sense, al-manul khas, it's mean kalam, ilmu kalam, or sometimes it is translated into discursive theology. And Professor Ednan Aslan is an expert in religious education, Islamic religious education, and he will explain this how the relation between Islamic theology and everyday life of Muslim. So sometimes Islamic sciences, classical Islamic sciences, or we say Islamic theology in generic sense, are opposed with and spirited with the experience of Muslim in everyday life. And this is the concern of Professor Ednan. Professor Ednan is an expert. And yeah, I would like also to say thank you for our vice rector. Our vice rector, Professor Sitkon Maisur, for the coming to our colloquium. Continuing a little bit to our introduction. So why we should study, we should investigate everyday life of Muslim, not only, for example, kiai, ulama, and also, for example, religious authority, because Islam is not only concerned with normativity. Normativity means legal text and also normative text which is found in Hadith, Quran, and others, but also concerned with the real life of Muslim. And this is sometimes neglected in our scholarship. And as just to short introduction, Professor Aslan, he likes to visit Muslim countries. He just visit, for example, Indonesia and spend 3 days in Jepara alone, in Jepara, Central Java, to make some sort of research or mini research or anthropological research or ethnographic research pertaining to religious life in Central Java. So we would like to hear more about his inspiring lecture. Jadi kita akan mendengarkan nanti ceramahnya yang sangat mencerahkan terkait dengan, ini saya pengantar sedikit aja, 1 menit lagi, terkait dengan teologi Islam dan kehidupan sehari-hari Muslim. Jadi sebagai antropolog, sebagai ilmuwan, sebagai profesor itu, walaupun sudah jadi profesor, itu tidak boleh berhenti belajar, berhenti meneliti, because research is essential part of our duty, our responsibility as professor, as a faculty member, and also a student. Without research, we would become stagnant and static, and could not produce any new knowledge. I think it is just our short introduction, and Professor Ednan is an expert on Islamic theology. We have met Professor Ednan during my stay in Austria in 2015, and I'm happy here to see him again. And the last, I think, 7 years, he was energetic and dynamic, and now he still saw his his energy for in front of us, our lecture, and also our student. I think that's all, and would like to ask Professor Ednan to deliver his lecture on Islamic theology and everyday life of Muslim. Time is yours. Mobi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih Bapak Direktur Program Pascasarjana IAIN Salatiga atas arahan dan sambutannya. Menuju acara yang selanjutnya, yaitu doa. Kepada yang terhormat Dr. Oktio Franky Biantoro, dipersilakan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bapak Ibu yang kami hormati, marilah kita sejenak menundukkan kepala, memohon kepada Allah Subhanahu wa taala. Mudah-mudahan acara kita hari ini berjalan dengan lancar. A'udzubillahi minasyaitonirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Hamdan syakirin, hamdan na'imin, hamdan yuwafi ni'mahu wa yukafi'u mazidah. Ya Rabbana lakal hamdu kama yanbaghi li jalali wajhikal karimi wa 'azimi sultanik. Allahumma inna nas'aluka salamatan fid din wa 'afiatan fil jasadi wa ziyaratan fil ilmi wa barakatan fil rizqi wa taubatan qoblal maut wa rahmatan 'indal maut wa maghfiratan ba'dal maut. Allahumma hawin alaina fi syakaril maut wa najata minan nari wal afwa indal hisab. Allahumma nawwir qulubana binuri hidayatika kama nawwatal ardo binuri syamsika wa qamarika abadan abada. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adzabannar. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Bapak Ibu yang kami hormati, sampailah kita pada acara inti pada kegiatan di sore hari ini, yaitu Interdisciplinary Colloquium dengan tema Islamic Theology and Everyday Lives of Muslims, Rethinking in Light of Empirical Studies using the example of Austria, yang pada kesempatan hari ini akan dipandu secara langsung oleh moderator kita, yaitu Dr. Rifki Aulia Erlangga MHum. Kepada yang terhormat Dr. Rifki Aulia Erlangga, dipersilakan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, Prof. Ednan. Personally, I have a lot of questions. This is a very interesting topic to discuss, but we don't have much time. So, to make it official, Bapak Ibu, behalf of program Pascasarjana Yayan Salatiga, I would like to welcome you to our interdisciplinary colloquium entitled Islamic Theology and Everyday Life of Muslim, Rethinking in the Light of Empirical Studies using the example of Austria, with Professor Ednan Aslan from Vienna University, Austria. The floor is yours, sir.
Okay. Assalamualaikum. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Ednan Aslan. Thank you for inviting me, Vice Dean and colleagues, dear students. My name is Ednan Aslan. I am coming from Vienna. I am Professor of Islamic Religious Education at the University of Vienna. Today I will talk about the relation between Islamic theology and empirical studies, and I will show you present some results of empirical studies about the situation of Muslim in Austria. In my presentation, I will give you some information about the situation of Muslim in Europe in different countries and some numbers about the future of Muslim. And after that, I will tell something about Islamic theology and the challenges of Islamic theology in European context, and the presentation of my result from my research and my conclusion, inshallah. Some information about
It's not working?
you can, this is some information about the situation of Muslim, really very briefly. We have at the moment in European context, without Turkey, without East Europe, like Bosnia and Herzegovina or North Macedonia, we have at the moment from the year 2016 about 25 million Muslims. Most of Muslims in France, for example, is 8%, and in Germany is 6.1%, in Austria about 7%, in Sweden more than 8%. You know, if you see, we have about 25 million Muslims from 2016, but for example, the projected size of Muslim population in 2050 in Europe under zero migration scenario. It is a picture of for the future, but zero migration from the Islamic countries to Europe. It should be about 10 million more Muslim in European countries. It should be 35,000, about 36 millions of Muslims in European countries by zero migration from Islamic countries, from Syria, from Turkey, from Iraq, from different countries. You know, 2015 we had a lot migration from Islamic countries, like from Syria, like from Iraq. If we have really very high migration from the Islamic countries, Muslim population, it should be about 75 million Muslim in European countries. It is a much, really very high population of Muslim in European countries, without East Europe, without Russia, without Turkey. If you see the situation in Russia, Turkey, it should be more than 100 million of Muslim in European countries. Because of that, it is a big challenge for the European countries. It is a big challenge for the Muslim itself. Mostly of Muslim, we have different type of Muslims in European countries. Third types like North Macedonia, Bulgaria, Greece. We have autochthonous Muslims in this country, you know, very historical. For example, we have the Muslims in Romania from 15th, 16th centuries. A second population of Muslims, migrants from differently Islamic countries, for example, Turks in Germany, Arabs in France. We have big migration population in different countries of Europe. Because of that, we have two types of Muslims in European context. It is the autochthonous Muslims and Muslims through the migration. That is the situation of Muslim. Because of that, the life of the Muslim in European context, it is really very important for the future of European countries, for the future of Muslims. Because of that, I will try to show you why Islamic theology in process of the integration of Muslim in European countries for relevance is. After the deed, this is little bit introductions to my presentation actually for my research, for the result of research. After the deed of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam, Muslims found themselves challenged to work for the understanding of Islam, above all, to find the ways to live according to its recommendation, Sharia. As Islam spread to the other cultural contexts, such question became even more pressing. But the Quran and Sunnah couldn't always provide clear answer to the problem of encounter with other cultures, religions, interacting, living with people, other language, and cultural in other geographic region. While the first generation of Muslims still had opportunity to turn directly to the Prophet for God's answer, response, wahi, to this or that human problem, the second generation, Sahaba, Tabi'un, referred exclusively to the Quran in this regard. They asked themselves, what did God mean by this? And what would God say about this? This began the actually renewal Islamic religious thought. In this sense, that Islamic tradition of thought gave very different answer to these questions. From this came the different imprints of Islam, different mazhab, aqidah, etc. These imprints always corresponded to the spiritual level, consciousness of a particular epoch, or to the perspective position of Quran in relation to the existing condition of life. The situation is no different today. Once again, Muslims in new European contexts are faced with questions which they cannot answer from their own tradition, but which they could very well answer according to the Reformed tradition of Islam. Understanding the Quran correctly means reflecting on questions arising from perspective condition of life in the spirit of the Quran in order to feel it with live life aware alienation from Islam. In the return to this not unknown but strongly repressed Reformed tradition of Islam, Muslims living in Europe are now faced with the task of creating conditions in which they can formulate questions and approach the Quran in an unbiased manner and without fear represalias from their environment. In this way, they can redefine the perspective of the Quran to the extent that they don't ask it questions that it simply cannot, should not answer. Based on this understanding, Muslims throughout their history have developed a variety of concepts, redefine and live Islam different political, social, economic circumstances, or even what position different religions should have in a Muslim country. There were also theological concepts that the government, the temporary residence of Muslim in non-Muslim society. The fact Does the Muslim state permanently in a pluralistic Christian society and regard it in their home? It is a challenge for the Islamic theology. Classical fiqh, usul fiqh, saw this as a danger assimilation which could threaten the future of Muslim and recommended emigration to Darussalam, realm of peace. Even concepts such fiqh al-aqalliyat, fiqh of minority, are unable to justify the position of Muslim in pluralistic Western society. The fact that an Islamic way of life, inner peace, would only possible in Muslim country doesn't coincide with desire of Muslim to migrate, as we increasingly observe the flight of Muslim not toward to the rich Muslim countries, but increasingly toward of West. Now Muslim in the West live societies that for the most part no longer derive their inspiration, influence, and those their rules from faith of their citizens. Present of Muslim in Europe present Muslim with the challenge of redefining their religion in the new society. This challenge implies an intense confrontation with secularism, for it is primarily a matter of Muslim reordering the place of their religion in their lives. In this process, expecting Muslim to drive ready-made concepts from their history can only lead to disappointment or isolation, because Muslims cannot answer the question they pose to Islam in the present from their history. This is a quote from one scholar colleague from South Africa, Asag. Farid Asag say, I start one quote from Assad: we don't see our faith as something that constantly changing. We are always looking for fixed concept, like the concept of Medina or the concept of Mecca. The both are too simplified, before the Hijrah, after the Hijrah. In the Meccan concept, we were the victims. In the concept of Medina, we won, we were the rulers. However, neither the concept is suitable for an open pluralistic society, because it is always a matter of give and take. I cut it, you can read it here in my presentation. Just a Christian denomination are questioning the history of their own theology in the face to these developments. Muslims are also challenged under this new global condition to question their own position in relation to other religions, and to think in forward-looking way, but still in the basic of Quran and Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad. Muslims living in Europe who are constantly confronted with religious, cultural diversity face more than those living in Muslim or Islamic countries to task the reshaping their own theology according to the pluralistic conditions of Europe. Because the future of Islam in Europe depends decisively on the success of such a society. In doing so, Muslims must not depend exclusively on the achievement of other religions. Rather, they must reshape their own theology in active dialogue with other religions in European context, so that Islam can clarify the contradictions between Islam and pluralistic society from within its own tradition of thought and send impulses in the direction of Muslim countries. So, to speak as proof that pluralistic society based on Quran and concept of Sunnah justifiable. Under the special condition of Europe, it is particularly important to educate the Muslim children to be capable pluralism, so that as adolescents are able not only rethink their relationship to social diversity, but also can learn to critically reflect on their own religiosity in relation to the new social conditions. The first step on the way to new theology is recognize that it must be constructed in such a way that it can take into account its addresses and it is applicable to them and their current situation. A theology that doesn't do justice to the present reality of Muslim will not get down well with them. In the context of our study, I will present you, we talk to the young Muslim. I will discuss in more detail below. One young man made the following comments about his relation with people and imams local mosque. He is a quote of this young man. Yeah, I mean, I can go to the imam anytime and say, I have this problem and that problem no. Or I have a big question mark in my head. What about it? And if the imam say, this is overwhelming me now, then I just have to ask other question. Okay, that is it. But of course, you can Google it. He's laughing. That anonymous then, I mean, I have had many conversations with imams, but I prefer to Google. It is a changing in our society. Further statement by young people show that the majority of don't reject the mosque, a place of classical teaching, but the young people's helplessness stems from the fact they neither understand nor feel understood by the teaching there, by the classical teaching. Effective pedagogy is therefore faced with the task of understanding young people in order to meet them with effective concept. In this regard, I see Islamic religious education as the engine of reform movements in Islamic theology, because only Islamic religious education as a discipline related to Islamic theology is in a position to bring the young people's question to the attentions of the Islamic theology and to challenge its own traditional teaching based on question, because this teaching currently neither relieves these young people nor offers them an emotional hope. Now we are coming to our presentation in Europe. Using the data from 5 years of research, it was really very long time research, using example of Muslim reality in Austria, we have attempted to create typology of Muslim who, unnoticed by the prevailing theology, have developed a certain independence. You can see here we have 5 type of Muslim in European context, but using example of Austria. 14.5% Muslim are preserving religiosity. They are really trying to practice of religion. I will give you more information. Second part, very important part of the Muslim in Austria, but this example from us, Austria, but I think the situation in other West European countries not different. Pragmatic religiosity, about 30%. Open religiosity, about 14.8%. Religiosity as a cultural habit, about 29.6%. Detached residual religiosity, about 14%. Perhaps a little bit information about this type of Muslim. You can see we have not one type of Muslim, we have different type of Muslim, different type of religiosity on context of Europe. This is third, for example, type of Muslim preserving religiosity. Religious orthodoxy and heightened religiosity up to including categorical claim to religious truth. Value conservatism, traditional of cultural of origin play central role. I cut it here. Here see just 14% of Muslim, they are really a critical view on the handling of Christian religion and Christian praxis in Austria. Social space in which those affected more are primarily the parental home, the workplace, but also mosque and religious organization. For the type of Muslims in European context, Europe, religiosity, an important part of their everyday life. Second part, pragmatic religiosity, they are religious people, religious praxis at high level, characterized by the self-determined and sometimes anonymous approach to religious rules and regulations. Religious attitudes, position, religious contents, rituals are interpreted independently and self-confidently and performed in individual way, dividing from the traditional canon of correct religious praxis. Self-confident appearance as a devout Muslim in Australian society is able as a Muslima in public space. This is the second type of Muslim. Third type of Muslim, religiousness, a cultural habit. It is really, religion is just cultural habits by the Muslim. Decreasing importance of religion beliefs and praxis is various areas of everyday life. The praxis of religious act is less conscious religious act, more an orientation toward cultural tradition like Ramadan, Eid al-Fitr, and like this. The loss of the sense of religious belonging also leads to decline in theological knowledge about Islam. Third part is the really detached residual religiosity, aversion to religious praxis, mosque and Islamic association, religious relics, in the form of purely personal beliefs in a creator, God, and or paradise. It's not more. The Muslim religious affiliation as a relic on the origin of parents' generation, which is maintained for the sake of tradition or only because of the attribution by the so-called majority society. It is the result. We can discuss about it. I can show you more information about the situation of hijab, visiting of mosque, but I try to come to my conclusion. In this process, was I present you of setting of Muslim in Europe, Islamic theology is a particular importance. Even the integration process is not primarily a religious task, but Islamic theology can help to interpret the change and those in open discussion with its own tradition, ensure the preserving of Muslim identity in secular and pluralistic society. In doing so, Islamic theology has the task of the picking up people from their fears and expectation where they are, taking them along and accompanying them so that they can understand the theological, scientific development of Islam. To do this, it must first decide whom is really wants to address. The result of the study suggests that this cannot be done without rethinking because it doesn't sufficiently know the reality of its target group, Muslims, their characteristics, which are addressed in classical teaching in a mosque sermons, no longer correspond to their social reality. The vast majority don't define themselves by the reference to theology, classical theology, by their current life work of their maturity, which enables them to make anonymous theological decision for their everyday religious life and to practice their own accordingly. The finding of the study present both the task and opportunity for Islamic theology to delve into real existing world of the people of Muslim faith in order to understand the change in their religious thinking. For Islamic theology, this also means expanding its traditional toolkit in the direction of empirical theology, or placing itself in an interdisciplinary context. The classical scholarship, ulama, of individual thinkers, the old halal and haram templates are not sufficient to preserve, let alone explain, complex phenomena and changes. Attempts to enter empirical reality through normative discourse without taking this reality into account can lead to the marginalization or radicalization of Islamic theology. However, this should not mean that Islamic theology must accept the facts of the norm. It is real task is to reflect on the relationship between the factuality of empirical reality and normative claims of social reality of Muslims, and to make the tension between empiricism and normativity fruitful for research. Opening Islamic theology to empiricism would also mean that classical doctrine pursues the new religious expressions from a new perspective and answer to resulting question which Islamic theology doesn't know from their own cultural theological history, instead of driving dogmatic conclusions. The basis of Islamic theology, understanding of wahi, revelation, has always been the religious experience of the people. if theology is truly interested in the living religiosity, it must learn, understand the people's question as mandate to revive indigenous Islam. In the Quran, the question of the people meet with the answer of God. The people's question are as important as God's response. Muhammad alayhi salam didn't descend from mountain with a finished book. Rather, the Quran emerged gradually from the life. Even though the Quran speaks of the people who have long since disappeared, the book shows clear mixture of the human and the divine. Therefore, Islamic theology cannot be alien to life in terms of the Quran. Theology is committed to connect it with life. The result of this study show that Islamic theology has lost sight of the reality of Muslim life, is unaware of the new form religiosity, and therefore doesn't gratefully accept them as a challenge. The Muslim community insists and familiar religious forms as norms for everyday lives leads either to flight from religion or to radicalization on the fringes of society. Therefore, instead of taking offensive at its addresses, theology should consider its most urgent task adequately grasps to the reality of Muslim lives. If it tried to disqualify the new religion's form as degenerate or un-Islamic without understanding them, and did not allow an open dialogue between God and man, this would have fatal consequences for it. Another finding of the study concerns the changing of identity of the Muslim woman, who is often no longer willing to be defined by her traditional role. The new Muslim woman challenged Islamic theology, in particular to rethinking the classical dogmatic role of male-dominated theology in the light of changing social conditions. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, thank you so much for hearing me. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Prof. Aslan. Bapak Ibu mengingat waktu yang sangat mepet, saya persilahkan Bapak Ibu yang ada di ruangan dulu untuk mempersiapkan pertanyaan. Kami berikan kesempatan untuk 3 orang. At the very moment, we also live on YouTube, and we have a lot of viewers and questions. But I do hope that we try to give the opportunity to our audience right here. Ya, oke. Baik, 3 orang, silakan Bapak Ibu bisa mengangkat tangan. Silakan untuk memberikan pertanyaan kepada Prof. Aslan. I do believe that this is very interesting topic because I see a lot of difficulties in Europe, but in here, perhaps at least in my environment, my kampung, I don't know how to describe it. For example, in our daily life, in fasting month, in Ramadan month, for example, we do tarawih, we do everything else, even without thinking, without discussion, and it resolves a lot of problem in our society. I think what I heard from your presentation and your paper as well, the opposite, or can you give a little comment about that, or compare it to Indonesia and Vienna?
You know, I am since March here in Vienna. Thank you so much for this question. You know, I am going to talk about Professor colleagues about it. For example, I am going to Tarawih praying. In first day, it will be, I think it is more than 500 people. You know, we close the street. Well, really, a lot of people there. Children, women, old, young, wonderful, you know, picture in the society. But now, yesterday, I was in same mosque. We lose more than 70% of mosque visitors. We are really 4 or 5 saf in the mosque. We lose perhaps more than 70% of Muslims who visit the mosque. It is very important question now for me, for the Imam, for the Islamic theology, why we lose the people. You know, we have to rethinking our tradition, we have to rethink our theological understanding and our tradition. I have not the answer. I have just the question. We have to rethink about it. Why we lose our Jama'ah in our mosque? Because of that, the reality of Muslim is a challenge for the Islamic theology. Islamic theology can say they are not good Muslim. You know, this is easy answer. They are not good, haram, halal, on this. It is easy. But the reality of Muslim society is different. They have perhaps no time. Some people are old. Some children are there. They cannot pray 2 hours. We have to change perhaps our tradition or understanding from this theology. Because of that, the reality of society is the basis for the future of Islamic theology. From the society, we can understand our theology. Quran is saying, Quran is a product of society. God's response for the question of society. Because of that, you know, we have to understand the society. If we understand the society, we can produce really a theology which know which address is the goal of Islamic theology.
Right. I do believe that Bu Nur Maliha want to say something to respond. Prof. Ednan.
No, it is not to respond, but beliau itu mempertanyakan ketika di masjid di awal-awal itu softnya panjang, ya. Tapi beberapa minggu setelahnya tiba-tiba softnya tinggal 4, sehingga beliau bertanya, the question is kenapa para jamaah itu ketika Ramadan itu di tengah-tengah menjadi habis, menjadi hilang. Nah, di sini yang dipertanyakan itu adalah teologinya. Sehingga kenapa seperti itu? Ada apa? Apakah itu tradisi ataukah hal yang lainnya? Mungkin begitu ya Pak Dir ya. Ya, adakah yang akan merespon dengan hal yang diulik oleh Prof. Aslan? Ustadz Maimun,
Ya.
monggo.
Terima kasih. Thank you for this opportunity to ask to Prof.
You can stand up,
Ednan
Pak
Aslan.
Maimun,
Yes?
please. Stand up so we can see
Okay.
your face.
Yeah, first, I want to say, Prof. Ednan, I welcome to State Institute for Islamic Studies, IAIN Salatiga, and welcome. Although our institution is small, but I feel small but beautiful. Yeah, I have some question for Mr. Ednan. The first, when I visited Vienna University, and my advisor is Prof. Lolker, maybe Prof. Ednan also now about Prof Lorker. Prof Lorker is my advisor when I visited in Vienna University in 2014. Yeah, 7 or maybe 8 years ago. One of the problem over there that when I visited over there, the board of the member board of parliament, they proposed to a regulation to the parliament, to the government, that they want to make regulation for Islamic community. One of the regulation is the Muslims community banned to invite the da'i from another country, and then from another country, and then the Al-Quran must used by the government formulation, especially in terjemah, the translation must be from the government. It is the proposal of the parliament, because the government and at that time is afraid from the radicalism thought, because not many, but some of the young peoples over there, especially Muslims, young people, they interested to the radical thought, and many of them adhere the radical Islamic theological. It is one problem maybe, and what kind of the type of Muslim community, like type A, type B, type C, what kind of the type of the Muslim community in Vienna that closer to the radical thought or radical thinking, and maybe we can not we, but they can choose the type or the kind of the theological that they adhere, so they can avoid the radical thought about Islam. And then the last, as I knew that in Austria, especially in Vienna, there are many Muslims community, Sunni, Shi'i, Baha'i, and other communities. The problem is, how to build the harmony between them. It is the one problem. Like in Indonesia, we have many community with the different theological thought. NU, Muhammadiyah, Persis, and another community. Like in Europe, is more similar. In Indonesia, this problem is not serious, because we have the harmony to the government. We have the majority. But in Austria, the Muslims, besides they have the problem internal community, because they many kinds of the type of the Muslims, they also the position of the minority. So at least they have two problems. The first, the internal harmony of the Muslim community, and beside that, they must make the good relationship with the government and the state. What is the kind of theological thought that can solve all of the problem maybe? It is the last. of my answer. Thank you for this opportunity for the community and especially for Pak Direktur. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi. Check. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Maimun. I do believe that at somewhere in Pak Maimun's question, yeah, I know. And then first, he tried to explain that the translation problem is like, for example, at a very moment in Indonesia, for example, radicalism issue is pretty bad lately. So what I do understand from Pak Maimun's question, let's say in the term jihad, generally the government or a lot of people would say that jihad is bad, kill people, bombing something and so on. But what we believe here, if we work in the, for example, I'm working in the rice field, so that is jihad. As a teacher, I'm teaching, that is jihad as well. That's the first, is about the translation. And then the second one, Pak Maimun want to know if you say that in Vienna, there is a lot of Islamic organization, yes? So how internally, normally, Muslim society in here, the relation is, I don't know how to say, it's actually not so good. Good, but cannot be as one. We, I'm sorry to say this, but we begin fasting in different days, different date, and sometimes, and it is a huge problem for some people. In Vienna, how Muslim there overcome this problem? Perhaps we can copy, we can try the same solution in Indonesia. I think so.
Second question, we have no solution. The no solution is the solution. We have no solution, you know. Look at that. Look at the time of Asr Sada, because we are fighting each other. After the death of Prophet Muhammad, we have no peace in the Islamic society. It is our reality. We have to understand it. Look, just the time of Asr Sa'ada. You know, Omar radiallahu anh, Ali radiallahu anh, Osman radiallahu anh. You know, it was really killing, blood, and from the time. In our history, I am missing really open, so peace message. It is the reality, we have to understand it. But the plurality of Islamic society is a chance for us. You know, we have not to be one community, but we have not to fight to each other. It is very important. I think we have different societies, for example, communities, one community for education, one community for helping, one community perhaps for technology, one community for secondary school, one community for primary school. I think this kind of plurality is good for the Islamic society. But we need not the unite of theology, we need basic ethical rules for our society. Democracy, human right, justice, they are the basic for a peaceful society, I think. We don't need one community, but we need in different community same basic of ethical rules.
Baik,
One second question, jihad is not bad, jihad is good, but our understanding is differently. Do you know, we cannot change the mind all of the people, but we can show something in European society, for example, what means jihad, what is the message of Islam. Do you know, colleague Maimun, it is not the question of translation, it is not the question of publishing, it is more question of how we present Islam in our everyday life. I saw a lot of Muslim converts in Germany, in United Kingdom, United States. Nobody told me a lot about Quran, but peaceful relationships in the Islamic family. I think if we show in European society how peaceful is Islam, it is the biggest message of Islam to the people. They want to understand what means Islam.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Ednan. We have a lot of questions as well. We live on YouTube. May I give one more question, at least from the YouTube? We have Mbak or Ibu Audi Razeta. Hi, we are one of the college students from Salatiga. Your topic is very interesting. It makes us realize to carry it. I think she's kind of described it is very challenging as a Muslim in Austria. And then we have a question for you. What is the solution? How can Muslim in Europe develop a theology that can be applied to the current situation? It is also acceptable to all people.
You know, a theology acceptable for all people is not possible. Because of that, we have different mazhab, we have different aqidah schools. You know, one theology for the Muslim is not possible. Because of that, we need diversity in the Islamic theology. It is good for the future of Islamic theology. We have challenges in European context because of the future of Islamic theology. But now we have in Germany different universities with Department for Islamic Theology. For example, Berlin, Tübingen, Frankfurt, different cities. We have now the studies for Islamic theology. If I say Islamic theology, I don't mind the Islamic studies, Islamic theology, not Islamic science. It is different, Orientalistic and Islamic studies in different case in European university. But I think the future of Islamic theology in Europe, I think, would be better. Why? We need for a good science peace and freedom. I think we have in Europe good basic for peace and freedom to develop new theology in European context. A theology for the people, theology from the people. It is the really wonderful relation. If theology understand, it is address. If the address understand his theology, it will be great if we develop in European universities a new theology. But it is good news. We have differently universities in Europe. They are teaching now Islamic theology in different cities.
Prof. Aslan, in this condition, we actually, it is about 200 participants, but it is rain. But even though they still make it here, inshallah.
It's a
But
pleasure. Thank you so much.
yes, I
Enjoy every second. Enjoy every second in the society. Really, I like it. Thank you so much.
thank you very much. I do hope that you can visit us again.
Wonderful people. Wonderful people. Because of that, I will take 3 students from there, from the University of Wallensonga, to meet with me to Vienna. We start a new project with the University of Wallensonga. We try to evaluate religious education in Austria and in Central Java. It will be a great research with my students from the Wallensonga University. I hope we can see you too in my country, Austria or in Germany, inshallah.
Amin, amin. So, Win Salatiga is a little brother from Walisongo University, Win Walisongo.
Sometimes little brothers are better than big brothers.
I don't know what to say. It is recorded, and Pak Muhyar.
Not every time the Muhyar, sometime, you know.
Okay. I still see a lot of participants want to ask a question, but unfortunately, um, yeah, iftar time. So could you please give us, let's say, 1, 2, or 3 points to sum up our discussion this afternoon, or let's say closing statement from Prof.
You know,
Prof. Aslan.
Thank you so much for your coming. It is really great pleasure for me to be here with great scholars and students. It is really, I enjoyed the time here in Salatiga. I hope we will see each other in other country too. Some students will be inshallah visit for PhD or universities. It will be great experiences in European universities. It will be great for you and for us too. I learned a lot from Indonesia. It doesn't mean that Indonesian people to learn from European context. I have to learn from you too. Because of that, we need more relationship to each other, more research with each other. It will be great for the future of the science development in both countries. I think European countries can learn a lot from Indonesia too. Indonesia is wonderful pluralistic society, peaceful society. We have to try to support this society. We have to try to save the future of the pluralistic society. It is my really last words to the students. Thank you so much.
Profesor Ednan Aslan, thank you very much, sir. Baik Bapak Ibu, dengan berat hati peserta kami, saya juga mohon izin menyapa teman-teman mahasiswa dan peserta dari dalam dan luar negeri yang mengikuti program ini dari live YouTube di Pascasarjana. Ada teman-teman mahasiswa, peserta lain juga adik-adik mahasiswa S1 dari Komunikasi Penyiaran Islam, kelas bahasa Inggris juga mengikuti, dan Bapak Ibu yang hadir, sungguh berkah tersendiri untuk kami, panitia semua. Ternyata hujan tidak menghentikan Bapak Ibu untuk datang meskipun tanpa pawang. Jadi tetap basah dan tetap ada di sini berusaha mencari berkah. Pak Direktur matur nuwun, Mas Edi, Bu Wadir, Pak Ruwandi, Pak Mukhyar, Prof. Budi, banyak sekali saya tidak bisa bicarakan satu persatu, tapi terutama Bapak Ibu peserta semua yang luar biasa mendengarkan, dan insya Allah di bulan yang baik menjelang buka puasa banyak ilmu yang kita dapat. Kalau saya pribadi salah satunya adalah saya bersyukur sekali bulan puasa ada di Indonesia. Tadi ngelihat begitu itu di sini masih nyaman sekali gitu ya. Habis ini buka puasa dan insya Allah sudah disediakan oleh panitia. Sekali lagi mudah-mudahan berkah semua dan semua yang kita diskusikan hari ini menyelamatkan kita dunia akhirat. See you next time insya Allah. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Baik Bapak Ibu semua, tamu undangan dan para hadirin sekalian, sampailah kita sampai di penghujung acara untuk pertemuan pada sore hari ini. Kami atas nama panitia dan seluruh pengelola program Pascasarjana Yayasan Salatiga mengucapkan maaf apabila ada kesalahan di dalam penyelenggaraan kegiatan ini. Marilah bersama-sama kita menutup acara Interdisciplinary Colloquium pada sore hari ini dengan membaca hamdalah bersama-sama. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Cukup sekian dari kami. Billahi taufik wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
I think we still have this director. So would you please
Cek. Bapak Ibu yang kami hormati, setelah ini silakan untuk mengambil. Terima kasih. Saya serahkan lagi kepada panitia. Silakan.
Silahkan kembali ke rumah masing-masing dengan selamat. Nah, hari ini hari luar biasa untuk Indonesia. Awal dari Salatiga, merdeka.